work's a thing you do, not a place you go. Now the tools need to be able to, like you said, they need to be able to enable that modern worker to be productive from anywhere.
Hello. Welcome to another episode built by humans. Today's episode was awesome. We are fortunate to have Craig Walker, founder and CEO of Dialpad, on the episode. Dialpad is one of those companies that I feel like has been on my radar for years, but really just under the radar in terms of just the vision. And I just think they're an incredibly well-positioned company. And so this conversation was really interesting to hear from Craig. He's a multi-entrepreneur, very, very sharp. And it's not surprising to hear that he is building a big and exciting business.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's definitely a trend where every single entrepreneur that comes on that's a 2, 3, 4X founder, they just have a couple more tricks up in their belt. And I think Craig came here and dropped some knowledge, some things in particular, the importance of investing in a platform early that can be scalable when you move up market. Another thing that I think was really astute was some of the key considerations that you need to make when you're making acquisitions. And so I thought it was awesome learning from Craig, honestly.
Yeah, well, let's get into the episode. Craig's got a lot of knowledge to drop, and here we go. All right, Craig, what's going on?
Good to be here. Not too much, just working away.
I always like starting things off with a bit of an icebreaker, and I also love talking to repeat entrepreneurs. And so this is your third startup. Let's just say whatever happens, Dialpad becomes the biggest, most important company ever, and you are forced to move on to do something next. Are we thinking number 4? What's the next act for you in that world?
Wow, that's a great question. So if theoretically I were to leave Dialpad, what would I do next? I don't know. It's funny. I've always been drawn to the restaurant industry, and I would love to, and it drives me crazy to think that, my experience of going to a restaurant is pretty much the same that my grandparents' experience was. You walk in, you see the hostess, you sit and wait, you get taken to a table. Someone comes, takes your drink order, someone comes and takes your order. It's just this process has not changed in generations. And so I would love to, assuming it was a successful exit and I had the capital to do it, my mission would be to buy a restaurant, treat it like a software development lab, and just use it as this killer lab to create the most incredible experience of, how do you use technology? How do you use ratings? How do you do loyalty? How do you do payments? How do you do reviews? How do you do all these crazy things? But my vision was you always needed to own the restaurant to experiment with all this stuff. So if I were to ever have to do it, if I have one more idea in me, that's going to be it.
Wow. All right. Well, I'll join the wait list. Because that sounds pretty cool. But what you're doing at Dialpad is also pretty awesome. And for those people that aren't listening, maybe you could give the quick elevator pitch on Dialpad for context.
Yeah, sure. So I used to run the Google Voice product back in 2008 to 2010. And in that, we built this really incredible platform and system that allowed where we give an end user a phone number that would ring you on all your phones, move all of the features to the cloud, and make voice communications cool and fun and delightful. And we realized, hey, that's great for consumers, but it's horrible. You go to a business and it's literally like 1975 all over again. There's this expensive $1,000 phone sitting on your desk with a bunch of buttons. No one knows how to use it, lights blinking, and then you end up just pulling your cell phone out of your pocket and using that. So the whole phone system for businesses just seemed so archaic to me. So what we wanted to do was basically build Google Voice for enterprise. We actually got funded by Google to go do this. Me and my co-founders came from Google, and we're built on Google Cloud Platform, and we use a lot of their technologies. But it really was, how do you modernize business communications, and how do you make it actually useful for the way we viewed people would work in the future? And that working in the future is not sitting at a desk from 9 to 5, with a frickin' Cisco phone in front of you. It's literally, you got a phone in your pocket, you got a laptop, you got a tablet. Maybe you'll be at your desk for some portion of the day, and maybe that phone on the desk will ring, but it's a much broader way to be more productive from anywhere. So basically, Dialpad is a cloud-based, software-first business communication system that does everything from video conferencing to phone system to contact center. And along the way, we acquired an artificial intelligence company that gives us real-time AI on all your conversations. So, like you and I are on this conversation. If I were to say, "Hey, I'll take an action item to send you the recording of this after the meeting," that gets captured in the summary of our call. Like, "Hey, here's an action item that you had to do," and it's just using intelligence and using modern technologies to make people be productive from anywhere, which frankly became super important when COVID hit and no one was working in offices. And then every business on the planet needed a way to make their workers be productive from anywhere. So that was kind of like the future state we were built for. And it just kind of came a little more rapidly over the last couple of years.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, everything you said resonates immensely with me. I worked at a high velocity inside sales company called Single Platform in 2012 and 13, where we had the phones on the desk. You got a call on your cell phone. It wasn't tracked in Salesforce, so people were freaking out.
Yeah.
And then you want to text people, and then all of a sudden you're not getting, even though it's a high value activity, you're not getting credit for it. Also was a Google Voice user, and so I see the connection. But you're right. I mean, I think, last night I was thinking about, I was basically getting ready for bed and in a message with a bunch of my leadership team in Slack, and just collaborating on something. And I'm like, the way that people work today, for better or for worse, it is just much more always on. It's kind of like the technology has to adapt to the humans instead of the humans adapt to the technology. And I mean, it sounds like this is kind of how you were thinking about things all along, and it got even more along those lines.
It's like literally like the technology shouldn't limit what you're able to do. And like the idea that everyone has $1,000 phone in their pocket that does messaging, does collaboration, does everything on it. And yet you go to work and they're like, "Okay, don't use that. Use this other thing from the 80s. And the only way it works is if you happen to be sitting here like that. When we started the company, we used to bang the drum on a saying of like, work's a thing you do, not a place you go. And I think like that's kind of really sums it up of like, man, like, I don't know the last time I left work at 5, 6, 7 p.m. And then that was the last time I worked until I showed up the next morning at 9. And like it just doesn't work that way, and I don't think anyone does. So it's it really is a reality that we had assumed. You got to assume certain things, and we assumed mobility beats fixed. That's a pretty safe assumption. We assume software beats hardware. That's a pretty safe assumption. We assume that the cloud beats on premise. And if you assume those three things, then you find yourself in this future state where people are more productive, and now the tools need to be able to, like you said, they need to be able to enable that modern worker to be productive from anywhere. So that was always the mission.
One of the things that I think is unique about your business is that I see the artificial intelligence, and being in the Salesforce ecosystem, the first thing I think about is like, oh, like Gong has a feature for that. And then I see the telephony solution for call centers, and I'm like, that's a business in itself. And then I see the internal messaging layered in. I'm like, that's a business in yourself. You guys have really, it seems like, come up with a unified solution to all of those things. And I imagine that has immense benefits, but also, for the entrepreneurs listening, challenges in building that type of business.
I mean, I think it's the end state that everyone wants to get to, particularly in the business communication space, because you don't want to be like, "Hey, we're just the video conferencing guys. And then if you want to make a phone call, then go over to here. But if you need a contact center, then go over to this other silo. And if you want AI to analyze it, then go add another tool. And if you want to do messaging, add a fifth tool." mean, that's a lot, particularly for an SMB or a mid-market company without a massive IT department. People just want one thing to communicate with in one way. So then, like you could get, by having it all in one platform, one, you have one throat to choke for all of it. Two, you have one administrative panel. Three, you have one bill to pay. Four, you get analytics across all of them, and you can actually see what's happening across your whole business. And then number five, if you have AI built into that platform, so all those touch points and all those conversations with customers and partners can now be analyzed. And my support team, I can get reports on what's the sentiment when these certain topics come up, or how many times was a competitor mentioned in the last 6 months, or which reps have a higher CSAT based on what the people are actually saying on the phone calls. You can't do that if you have all these disjointed silos. So it's an end state that gives you this nirvana, but it's, as an entrepreneur, it's much harder, right? Because we broke it into SEAL teams, and it's basically like 5 different startups within a startup. We're like, okay, you're the UCAS team, you're the CCAS team, you're the video conferencing team, you're the AI team, you're the messaging team, and then you have a platform team on top of it, and you have an analytics team and a devices team and a billing team and an integrations team, and you end up with a lot. But if you get it right and do it right, and those are massive, massive markets. We're talking north of $100 billion a year market that is still in the early innings of moving to the cloud. So having that ultimate, unified platform and product, I think everyone's trying to get to. The nice thing is we're just like the newer kids on the block, so we're able to build it in a more modern way that made it easier to do all in one.
Yeah, I gotta say, Craig, I'm pretty impressed. It's pretty awesome. I mean, being in the product right now, it looks great. I mean, I'm assuming that your customers really like what you have built. In that vein of thinking, like Scott said, this is various businesses you basically bundle together. How did you think about attacking each of these one by one? Walk me through the process of prioritizing what you needed to add and when, and what it looks like moving forward too.
Yeah. So step one, so we left Google we're coming up on our 11-year anniversary, but first day of the company was November 1st, 2010. And we left, step number one was build the platform that's going to host all these different products. So number one, platform first. We had built it internally at Google for Google Voice. We grew that to tens of millions of users. So I came up with Google scale for a consumer product is obviously incredible, right? And the second you launch it, you'd have hundreds of thousands of people sign up every hour. It was crazy. So you had to build it in a very, very scalable way. So we replicated that first. And then, okay, you have the platform. Now it's like, okay, what's the easiest product to sell and to develop on that platform? The first one was audio conferencing. Right? And I hated audio conferencing. I couldn't believe in 2010,
it's the state of the art
audio conferencing, you dial a number and enter a 7-digit PIN and hear a beep and don't know who's there or who's talking. Horrible, right? So the first one was, let's fix audio conferencing. We launched a product called Uber Conference. And you dial a number, you automatically joined. Give you a URL, you could see who's on the call, you can see who just joined, who just left, see who's talking, get their social information, could lock the room, could kick someone out. It married kind of what we did with Google Voice, but it marries the web with the telephony world. So you have this 140-year-old technology with this modern technology, and how do you use both of them together? So conferencing was number one, phone system was number two, so business phone system. And straight out of the gate, one of our very first customers was Motorola Solutions. And they're like, hey, we want to get rid of 20,000 desk phones, and we want to move all of our worldwide systems in about 2016. But they, out of the gate, we had this massive worldwide enterprise customer that, we wouldn't have wanted if we didn't have the credibility of coming from Google Voice. But that built a pretty robust enterprise phone system because we had the platform to build it on. And then a couple of years later, we added our contact center product, which shared a lot of the same stuff, but just got a little more complicated of how you route calls to the right agent at the right time, how you have additional features like queuing and callback and supervisor, listening in and whispering and taking over calls and things like that. So each step got progressively more complex, but it was all built on that same platform and all kind of followed that same theory.
You've been around the block a few more times than I have at this point. This is Troops is my first real venture-backed startup, but I remember when we were fundraising, connecting with Brad from Customer. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to meet him, but he had basically started desk.com. Salesforce bought it and was just talking to me about, platform. We built the platform. We spent 6 months building the platform, and I didn't really get it. But like that is a theme that I see amongst more seasoned entrepreneurs. They're able to start with that 5 to 10 year vision in mind versus someone like myself where it's let's find a wedge. And I mean, we went through a replatforming exercise this year, or about a year and a half ago. And it was a huge thing, and, very happy that we did it. But boy, if we had thought about the infrastructure from day one, we might be in a little bit different place right now.
That's kind of the maturing process. Like my prior startup was this company, Grand Central, that we got acquired by Google, became Google Voice. But we weren't built on a super robust platform when we were Grand Central. There were like 22 of us. We were working out of the small strip mall in Milpitas, or in Fremont. And it was really great tech. Like the features were really interesting, and like the ideas were super unique. But when we got acquired by Google, literally we spent 18 months rebuilding the platform to be able to handle like Google type scale. And that was a really great learning exercise. So when we started this, we had already gone through that exercise, 3 years before. And we started the company with the guys who did that and built that. So when you think about it as a foundation, like I've seen so many startups like build for this insane scale, and then the product sucks, so no one really cares, but they spent all this time and money building this insanely scalable thing that no one ever used. So you don't want to go down that route. But on the flip side, if you do know how to build a killer platform and you have conviction that, look, this is a massive market and we're right, and like we had seen enough indicators at Google Voice to know that people were frustrated with the way, like the phone companies provided service or the way that business phones worked, then we were pretty confident we were right. So we're like, okay, let's invest in the platform. And it's like building a foundation of a house, right? Like you can make the house as killer as you want, but if the foundation's, rotten, or if it's going to crack and fall or go down the hill, it doesn't matter. So we really did spend a lot of time on the foundation, and that foundation is the thing that literally is giving us a great competitive advantage against the likes of a Ring Central or a Zoom or anyone else. Like we have the full conferencing product. We have the full phone system product. We have the whole contact center product. We have the full AI product, all living on the single platform where, you probably saw the news a couple of days ago where, Zoom is trying to pay $15 billion to buy Five9. That's an entirely different platform. Like Five9, God bless them, but that thing was built in 2001. And it's like them trying to integrate those two things. Like, think of Zoom as a modern microservices architecture built out of a bunch of Legos. Think of Five9s as a monolithic, like marble statue that was, hand chiseled back in 20 years ago. Trying to get Legos and marbles or marble statues to like snap together and be integrated ain't going to be easy. So it is a distinct advantage, and it lets us do things like, we acquired that AI company. They were built in the same way. They were built on Google Cloud Platform, just like we were, snapped right in. We acquired a High Five, killer video conference company from ex-Google product managers, ex-Google engineers, built in Google Cloud Platform, built the exact same way, snaps right in. Those types of things are a lot easier when you're on the right platform. And then you can go acquire other startups that are on the right platform and make it really easy.
One of the questions I had for you in terms of taking the conversation. So one of the things that we talked a little bit about before the episode was just the importance of people, right? This is your third time around. And the longer I do this, and it sounds like you've had similar conviction, the more you realize it's all about the people.
Yeah.
And it's an easier thing to get your head around the longer you do this. But when you start to talk about acquisition and bringing in entirely net new operating rhythms, individuals that perhaps you didn't hire, that's a whole nother complexity. And so I'd be interested for you to just talk about like your lessons learned on the acquisition front and what that means for culture, and how do you maintain that foundation that you build, if you will, on the people side of things?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you're right. The people make everything, right? Like the technology comes and goes, but the people who persevere and continue to improve it and are aligned on the mission, like that's where the magic happens. So I was lucky, this is my third startup. First one I was put in in 2001. That was 4 years of torture, because 2001 was a brutal time to be running a tech startup. But we ended up getting acquired by Yahoo in 2005. But I still have, I don't know, a dozen people here 20 years later that were part of that 2001 startup. My chief product officer was the first guy I met on my first day in 2001, and he's was my co-founder at Grand Central. We did Google Voice together. He's my chief product officer here. So when you have people that you just trust and they know how you work and you know how they work, and then when it just kind of grows. It's a snowball from one company to another to another to another, and then they bring their friends or their first degree of separation. And so probably for the first 75 employees at the company, we either knew them personally or knew them through one degree of separation. So we were able to start with this awesome, aligned culture of, hey, look, we're frugal, we're scrappy, we work really hard. Our advantage of being a small company is we can move faster than big companies. We can make decisions, we can change our minds, we can get things wrong, and we can fix them. Those are really the only advantages you're going to have over a Microsoft or someone who has just unlimited resources. So we all kind of like shared those values, and now we're approaching 1,000 employees, and trying to reinforce that and continue to reinforce that. It's amazing that it works at this scale. So I mentioned we did 3 acquisitions. Back when before doing this, I used to be an M&A attorney in Palo Alto, and one of our clients was Cisco Systems, and I was like mid 90s. I was on their deal team, and they were the masters of M&A, right? And they did like 10 deals a year, and most of them worked out really, really well. And their whole philosophy was, yeah, the technology is part of it, but most importantly is like the cultural values, the people. And then when you bring them in, how do you engage them and make sure that they're incentivized to stay? How do you keep the job interesting for them? How do you kind of keep them like on their own mission without trying to integrate them too fast and like take away all the magic that you come for? And so I was able to see how great they were at that integration side. And so I always wanted to replicate it. So, as a private startup, having made 3 acquisitions, the tech was a big part of it, but more importantly were the people. And so like I mentioned, the Talk IQ was the artificial intelligence company. Their CEO used to work with us at Google. Very similar values, very similar architecture. High Five, we acquired them last summer. Ex-Google guys, built the same way, same kind of values, see the world, see like the changing business communications landscape and this massive opportunity. And then we just acquired a company called Care Knowledgeware. And same thing, CEO was an ex-product manager at Google, built this great AI-powered digital deflection chatbot that uses the content of your FAQs to answer questions for people on the website. Just like these have all been like, if I were to go out and hire these guys, these are the type of people I would hire. And so they've all just felt like a really natural integration. Now, if we were to go out and try to acquire, I don't know, some division of AT&T or something, I'm pretty sure the cultural alignment wouldn't be there, and it would be like a messy, probably unsuccessful M&A. So I do think the people are way more important, and having those key ones that are the ones that are driving a whole lot of stuff. You just have to keep them super happy and keep them totally engaged. We genuinely, like working with each other and seeing each other and being on this mission together. And hopefully we have fun together and overcome a lot of cool challenges together. But yeah, it's all the people. Like it's certainly not me. Like I'll have an idea or two, but I have no idea how to build it. Like everyone else has to do the real work. So it's all about the culture and the people.
Yeah, Craig, it's awesome hearing that background. It seems like you're really lucky. You must be someone that's really great to work with, because keeping people interested for the second and third round is a big testament of that. And so, especially when you think about all the things that people say around how important the DNA of a culture is, really determined by those early employees. If you're able to get that initial core of 70 people to be people that you already know, you're cooking with gas. Anyway, this is something I've been really curious about, more along the lines of what we were talking about earlier with this whole product that has so many use cases and so many features. What does your go-to-market look like, right? Are you going to a company and saying, hey, you got Chorus for call recording, you got Zoom for these meetings, you have Outreach as a dialer, like take all that and let's replace and just buy Dialpad, or what does it look like?
Yeah, it's a great question, because I think so. We kind of take the the Microsoft Office approach to it. Like Microsoft Office has everything, right? It has Excel, PowerPoint, Word, but it also has OneDrive. But they don't force you into OneDrive. If you want to use Box or Dropbox, they make it really easy to use that as well. And we kind of take the same point of view of like, look, your life will be so much easier and it's so much better if you just replace these 5 different tools and products with a single solution. But if for whatever reason you're in love with one of those, that's great. We're going to integrate with it and make it fit in really, really well. So it's interesting in that we sell to all segments. So small business, mid-market, and enterprise. And I'd say SMB and mid-market are much more focused on having a single vendor and a unified stack, right? And enterprises have bigger IT departments, maybe on long-term contracts for their contact center or for something else. So you get in with one of the products, and hopefully you delight them. And then as these other things come up for renewal, you can cross-sell and replace them and expand the footprint. But like legitimately in the mid-market, like, hey man, I'm a 400-person company. I don't want to have all these different tools. If you can give me one that does it all really, really well and gives me unique insights into what's going on in our business, man, that's perfect. And I was talking to the CIO of T-Mobile, who's a big partner of ours, and talking to him, he's like, look, my favorite number in the world is 1. Like if I can get it down to 1, like that makes my life so much easier. And so it's not just for them on the admin side, it's also for all the employees, so they don't have to say, hey, I'm going to communicate a certain way. What tool do I use? Like it should just be one tool and use it however you want.
It's interesting to hear that you guys sell to small businesses, mid-market, enterprise, because I think advice that you hear often is well, you can't be everybody to everything to everybody. And especially on the go-to-market thing, you need to really kind of be targeted in terms of where you spend your time. I guess, like, where did you start and how did that evolve? Because I could see that being a little controversial to a few different kind of go-to-market practitioners.
Yeah, for sure. And so, the general trend of a B2B SaaS company, let's say, is you launch your product, you sell it to SMBs, you add more features, you get more feedback, you keep improving it, then it becomes more robust, then you go up to mid-market, then you add even more features, you get more credibility, you start getting, like analyst coverage and people thinking about you, and then enterprises start dabbling, and then ultimately you're on this journey high to the right of bigger customers. That was the path we would have likely been on, but like I mentioned, like out of the gate, we got this opportunity to pitch Motorola, and we were as surprised as anyone when they decided to choose us as their worldwide phone service provider. And so basically we that kind of forced us to be enterprise grade, worldwide ready, like overnight. And in a certain sense, it was great in that it accelerated our development there and really got us to focus on being able to keep a worldwide,
Fortune
500 company happy. But it was kind of a painful period. Because we're like, man, we weren't expecting this for a couple of years. Now we got to get there. And then, how do your whole go-to-market, your marketing, your whole positioning, your everything just got accelerated and more complicated. But looking back on it, it was the best thing that could have happened to us because it did force us to grow up early. And what we realized on the business communication side is, look, like I'm just as happy, well, not just as happy, but I'm happy when a 2-person, law firm signs up for us or, like a 2,000 person law firm signs up for us. Both need the same things. And this is like now with this cloud-based communication, or only time in history where, like a two-person startup can have the exact same platform and stack that a multinational, Fortune 50 company could. Because like no two-person startup in the past is going to go buy like an Avaya PBX or a Cisco Call Manager for hundreds of thousands of dollars for the two of them. But now you can. It's all in the cloud. And hey, you know what? Guess what? This two-person company probably doesn't care as much about it being like super reliable and super secure and super encrypted and super robust, but they certainly don't mind that, right? And then the large enterprise maybe cares less about it being really easy to use and really delightful for their end users because they care more about those other security things, but they certainly don't mind it. So it really turned into a cool way where, look, we do a bunch of business online where people just come and sign up, primarily small businesses, and no one even has to talk to them. And that's effectively like free money. And then our mid-market is kind of an inside sales motion, and our enterprise market is more of a traditional enterprise sales motion. So it is, it's like playing 3D chess, and it's a lot to chew off. But I mean, the market's so big and the opportunities are so good that it would almost be foolish to like artificially limit yourself to a subset of the market.
I agree. And at least for me, the way that I think the world's going is like, if I was starting a company tomorrow, my aspirations would be able to create a solution that could work with any segment. Because that's just, it's the consumerization of the enterprise. I know that's a cheesy term, but it's
exactly right.
It's got to work for everybody.
And I think that's one of the advantages we had of coming from the consumer side. Like Google Voice was a consumer product. Yahoo Voice was a consumer product. Grand Central was a consumer product. And so you approach it with the end user in mind, and you approach it for like, what is the end user going to see? Whereas a lot of go look at the administrative, tools for like an Avaya PBX. And the idea that no one thought to improve that is shocking. So I think it's nice coming in as kind of an outsider and bringing that consumer mindset, because at the end of the day, I don't care if you work at IBM or, the corner flower shop, you're still an individual and you still have probably the same exact expectations, and you all want to communicate well, and you want something that's easy to use and delightful.
I just think there's a lot of value in optimizing for market share because, users are kind of the Trojan horse into opportunities today.
Yeah, that's right. And if you give them some wonky tool, they literally just won't use it. That was the learning, when we were doing the Motorola deployment. They're like, look, we've had these phones on these desks for decades, and we're watching the annual or monthly or quarterly usage. It just goes down every single quarter because people are just pulling their cell phones out of their pocket and saying, screw it, I'm not going to use this hideous thing you're giving me. So IT can try to force stuff on people, but I think the days of end users accepting that is behind us. And if you can get people more productive, you can serve the needs of both, right? Like, we're aimed at the end user, but we also, provide a lot of value to the administrators. That's the double whammy. But you're right. Like if people don't like it, or it makes their lives less productive, they're just not going to use it.
Here's a question for you, Craig, because I feel like, thus far it's been awesome. I love hearing the story, and it seems like you guys are crushing it. But I feel like I'd like to dig into the surface here a little bit. What would you consider as your biggest challenge right now? What are you really, really focused on over the next 6 months as a business?
So we launched our conferencing product 9 years ago. We launched our phone SIM product 6 years ago, and we launched our contact center product 3 years ago. So the longer you're out in the market, the more of like the long tail of features, and you've kind of run into every integration, and you've like sanded down the edges of everything. Where I'm super focused now is on the contact center side. I think again, the pandemic has changed how contact centers are managed, and being able to have agents available and flexible from anywhere is entirely new and unique. Whereas like, they used to make everyone come into like one central place and you'd have a supervisor walking the floor and overhearing conversations, and that's all been virtualized. So I think it's a massive, massive opportunity. So we're filling out kind of the more ancillary features in the contact center space, and we're going to keep doing that, both growing them inside and acquiring some technologies. And so that acquisition of Care that we announced last week, that was a big part of that. It's like, hey, you want a chatbot? You want AI-powered, ability to get your customers the right answer at the right time without them having to tie up an agent on a phone call? That's super, super powerful. So I'm focused on really, really making contact center uniquely excellent. And I think with our real-time AI, that does contact center, that's unique to us, where like, let's say I'm a supervisor, I can look at a screen of 20 ongoing phone calls to my agents. And I can see these ones are green, these ones are yellow, and these ones are red, meaning these are the ones that are going bad. And I can just click on it and see the transcript of what caused the AI to think this was a bad call. So I'd be like, oh my God, this guy's demanding a refund, or he says he's insanely upset. And like, now I, as a supervisor, can go in and save that call or improve it. Those are unique to Dialpad. You don't have to go add a gong or go add a chorus or anything onto it. And neither gong or chorus can do it in real time anyway. They just do after the fact analysis of your call recordings. So it really is a uniquely differentiated piece of the Dialpad story, and having that integrated to the whole other system really is the most important thing for us. And just make it an excellent experience, no matter whether you're an agent, maybe you're working in HR, maybe you're a sales guy. Like, it should all be one sheet of glass with just different use cases on it. So that's 100% of my focus.
What is on the horizon for communications in the next 5 to 10 years that you believe will kind of truly change the way that we experience some of these technologies and some of these things that we do all day, every day in our jobs, and, even in our personal lives?
Yeah, I think, mobility is always going to increase, and the networks are always going to get better. And so, we currently have 5G going out to various stages, but when you have super ubiquitous high-speed connection everywhere, like being able to get augmented reality on a video call, or being able to get coaching. Like, I would love, at one point of our AI, is we're just having conversations. It's almost like one pop-up video. I just want information to appear to make my conversations better. So, like, we can talk about, I don't know, like, Dunkirk or something, and like up comes the Wikipedia article on Dunkirk. Like, just a way to make, like, communications for 150 years has all been about, how do I make two endpoints sound good talking to each other, right? And now it's like, how do I analyze what's being said in that pipe and add more stuff to it to make all of us more intelligent and make that a better conversation? And I think that's over the next 5 years, as networks get better, as you're able to access that stuff more quickly, as you're able to do video on anywhere in the world on your phone. Like, I think video is going to become more important. I think AI is going to become more important. I think people are going to get coached more. So it's if I were to guess,
it's like
next 5 years,
Google Maps.
Yeah, exactly right. Now I can't get anywhere without it. I can't even get home.
I find that vision exciting, no question. But we'll I'm sure we'll have other things. Other ways we'll need to evolve.
Sure.
Well, Craig, this has been awesome. Loved learning more about your business, learning about how you think about the people part as well. And so I guess for listeners that are interested in checking Dialpad out, what do they do?
Go to dialpad.com, sign up for a free trial. Just check it out, start using it. Yeah, and follow us on Twitter, Dialpad HQ, or personally, CWalker123.
Love it. All right, well, thanks everybody for tuning in. We will see you on the next episode.